Democracy, I'm a Democrat. And in the same way as you stand up and you say in an election, let's go put it to the will of the people. And the people might stand up and say, we need this change or we don't need that change. If we didn't know and we're working hard to ensure that we can bring about that change, I think there are enough South Africans who are hankering for change. That's what they want. Otherwise, they wouldn't be taken to the streets. They wouldn't be marching in their numbers. Who is protecting Jacob Zuma? He's not the electorate. He's the caucus in parliament and the ANC itself. So ask the people, give them a voice. And whatever the outcome of that is, we'll live with it. But let the people be heard. That's the first principle of democracy. I didn't support Brexit. I'll say that up front. But you know what? The people at least had a voice in it. That's the essence of democracy, surely. On the second question, I think the quantum was far less than that. And at that point, the donation had come from Sahara, if I'm not mistaken, and through that particular process. The difficulty was, at that point, the issue was not about the exchange of influence and finance. In fact, we made it quite clear, if I'm not mistaken, and having had this conversation, is that the Guptas then requested that Helen Zille give them a blue light brigade from the airport somewhere, and she simply said, we refuse. And their influence has grown. There's no doubt they've gone ahead and now have captured Eskom, have captured many state-owned enterprises, so much so that they can offer millions, 600 millions to deputy finance ministers. So without doubt, there can be no rationale to accepting any financing from that. In fact, I invest extraordinarily at making sure that anyone who donates the money to the DA cannot exchange any favor from government whatsoever. On the question of party political funding, of course it's going to be a challenge, because whilst I uphold the principle of transparency, it is held up also by the principle of democracy. And what you've got as a party that is setting itself up as a dictator is that the best way to eradicate opposition is to destroy their funding. If you don't have to, I'm not suggesting that these people are funding the DA, but you look at what happened with First Rand, you look at what happened with Nedbank. When they stood up and opposed the government, there was someone to Lutuli House and told they'd lose government contracts. So, can you pursue that at the compromise of democracy? Is the vexing question. That's why we are debating this matter in Parliament, because the value of democracy still maintains, and it's an important value. Because once you lose that and you lose opposition, and the state uses its machinery to undermine democracy, then you have profound problems on your hands. I wanted to invest time in your question, and I think in the speech I tried to outline a few things. The first is that I believe the post-ANC world will be a realignment of politics. It must bring together parties that agree on, and I spoke about the transition from liberation to coalition. It must bring parties that agree on at least 5 values, which are constitutionalism, the rule of law, an inclusive economy, and a market-based economy. The principle of non-racialism, which is not something we should take for granted. The idea of building a capable state, where in fact you don't attract people there on the basis of cadre deployment, for that's the original sin when it comes to state capture. And then lastly, the intolerance of corruption. We have a government program that we are modeling at local government at this point in time, based on those principles. I can speak a lot about what our policy offer would look like, because in fact, as I started to outline, that it must be about economic growth that creates work. a growth that is born out of the fact that micro-enterprise must be the backbone of our economy. That city-led economic development is part of the key for the future of South Africa. Because cities have got the balance sheets to be able to build infrastructure rather than simply us growing our economy on the back of consumption. It's the idea that, in fact, we must rethink our education. And that's why when we're here, I spoke a bit about charter schools. The idea that we must remodel education in such a manner that we can enter public-private partnerships so that kids, particularly Black South Africans, can gain education at a private school quality level. And I think it's possible. It's the notion, I speak about healthcare, about how we want to make that more universal for more people. I will speak about safety, about how we seek to professionalize the safety, the police service, rather than having it led by people who are deployed civil servants. And I could speak at length about what reforms we'd bring to various sectors. The question at the moment is about jobs. So you asked me what the offer is in 2019. I think the offer is simply jobs, jobs, jobs. It's got to be a question of change, and that change must be a change that brings jobs. That's the fundamental focus in 2019. Because the crisis in South Africa is fundamental around the economy. And I think we've fallen prey in the last while of making it simply just about Jacob Zuma. But the political economy has had profound consequences in the fact that many South Africans don't find work. And that is the pain I feel, particularly around young people, who form the majority of people who are unemployed. So that must be the crucial focus. Let me respond to those first three. Paul, we were the first ones who were very committed. Here's the irony of all ironies. It was Julius Malema who led the charge against the fight against the Scorpions. And a massive commitment towards that anti-Scorpions. I find, when people say, hey, these are politicians, they're a chameleon in their nature. We will kill for Zuma, now we want to kill Zuma. We will remove the Scorpions, now we've got a problem of accountability. I think we must watch these things because sometimes consistency is key, and it speaks to the second question that someone asked me about opposition. They made the same call. And now we can all pull back. But the call is there. But to more of your question, I think I've thought about this question of corruption in multiple ways. The first is one, as I really do believe we must put up the Scorpions and put them as an independent unit. The law as it's currently framed at the moment allows us to put up more SIUs as opposed to just one. And some of them don't all have to be public. We can interact them with some private prosecution that can come on board. So long as they remain independent of the current police unit in and of itself, which is where the problem lies. But I do think, and we've made this call before, that the appointment of, because in policing corruption and policing crime, the police do one job. But not only that, you want the head of the police to be someone who can be professional, not a politician who's deployed there. You get Ria Pierre there, you have problems. So get someone who's a seasoned career politician to be there. But you want also to ensure that without doubt the head of the NPA is appointed in a similar process to how we appoint the public protector. Because at this point in time, the power to appoint the head of the NPA is given to the president. And no president who is compromised is going to appoint somebody who will investigate them. That's why Shaun the Sheep is not doing anything at this point in time. So I would propose quite strongly that when we do the appointments of the NPA, we must amend that particular act and ensure that we can bring the appointment of the NPA through Parliament, reappoint the Scorpions, and then ultimately the proclamations of SIU can be broader so that we are much more effective at attending to the question of corruption. Well, that's your debate. I'm dealing with the current mechanisms that we've got. Questions. I've already covered the fact that on the first, the money was paid back. So I have no inclination of dealing with the Guptas, and we're very clear about it. I've never had an interaction with them. The realignment of politics, and you asked me about the ANC MPs that are there, I've already outlined that it must be based on those values that we share. So if the likes of Pravin Gordhan stand on those issues, of course, let us build entities that we can build together to take South Africa in that direction. It's a vision that we hold. It's not just political pragmatism and finding different homes. It's about saying, let us get together so that we can put that South African agenda forward. And I'm willing to work with people like that. They may not all even come from the ANC. They may come from various other alignments. And we must work with it. As long as we understand those values, as long as we get that when we talk about an inclusive economy, what is the program of government? I've always said, people say in coalitions, you must settle the question of ideology first. If you do that, then there can be no need for political parties. Political parties contest in different ways. Nowhere in the world do you see the settling of ideology first before you deal with coalition. You deal in principle with the idea that what is the government program you want to put on the table? That's what's kept the coalitions at local government on the go. When we drafted that co-governance agreement, it was very meticulous and it went to great pain to say, we will do this, we will deliver basic sanitation for the poor, we'll ensure road infrastructure is upheld, and it dealt with all of those subjects. That was the principal focus that started that coalition at local government. And I think at national government, we can find ourselves on this issue and say, here is, if we're looking to bring delivery, we're looking at an inclusive economy, we're addressing the question of justice, how do we go about those issues and advance it? And so long as we can coalesce around those, we can achieve a government program going forward. Look, as I said, the early elections, the call is not first from, they've made a call before. But then, you asked me whether I'd call for a secret ballot. Secret ballots occur in very unique conditions. There must be evidence of threats, bribery, etc., etc. And in this instance, the matter has not occurred. Therefore, I think it stands to reason that we must be quick to say it must be an open ballot and let each party be able to express itself to the electorate, to say, no, we don't think the electorate must vote on this issue. Let each party be able to deal with that, as I have to deal with my own constituency, who I've got to say to them, I wanted to give you the power, and I still do, and party X doesn't want to. That's the choice. And if you don't want to give the vote to the people, that's fine. But then come make the point in Parliament. That's all I'm asking for. And I think I've dealt with the question of the numbers and the open vote. We'll continue to canvass. It's true for any motion. You don't, when you even table a motion of no confidence, you don't stop. You go canvass people, you go talk to them. And you say to them, come, I think this is good for South Africa. It's necessary for South Africa. And as uncomfortable as it feels, here's the route I think we should go. I don't know. Let me answer just a few questions. People are saying, why not wait, and what was the party mechanism and all of that sort of stuff. Where's a party? We sat down and we asked the question, what happens in this period in time in South Africa? Where are we in the cycle? Firstly, I think the ANC has never been lower. They know it, they are below 50%, so their opposition of the motion will not be born out of some form of they know they are confident about the mandate, they know they've lost support. And I think it gives a great opportunity, and that's why you'd call it, because I'm saying they are not representing the mandate of the people. And so, if you say to me I must allow the ANC to die a natural death, there are 600 days between now and 2019 potentially. 600. Therefore, in that universe, where if you read every weekend emails that are coming out, you have to tell me quite quickly how much will be left in 2019. So there is an anxiety on that issue that we face. Would I offer seats to Pravin Gordhan? Hey, I think that's a question you must ask Pravin. I think South Africans like him, so long as we can agree on those values, it's not seats for me to offer. We'd have to rejig the list, obviously, and that's an electoral process, not one I can do now and say seat X will now belong to person Y. That's why the elections then become necessary. So. The question you asked speaks to the Van Zyl-Slabbert report that he tabled in Parliament to say we should, rather than just simply adopting a straightforward proportional representative system, to go for a constituency-based system. And his proposal actually accommodated both, because the current format as we have allows for a multiplicity of voices. And that's what's the strength of our democracy, which is a good thing. We have multiple voices. We have parties that represent a small constituency but have a voice in Parliament. I think that's important. And his proposal said, let's give 100 seats on that basis, and let's take the country in 300 constituencies, so that MPs are accountable to constituencies rather than just simply on a party list. And I think we've never departed from Van Zyl-Slabbert's issue. It requires a constitutional amendment, which, as you know, that requires quite a higher threshold than just a simple majority. And I think, as we've put it before Parliament, it's a question South Africa must consider. I certainly think we must even go a step further. Why don't we directly elect the president? Why don't we set up that the president can be elected by the people rather than by Parliament? So I do think we need reform, because what we're seeking to achieve is accountability more to the people and less to the party. But as I've called for people, this current ANC will never support that. And that's why we need this new beginning. That's why we need this change. And I close just with the thought, you challenged the party and the DA. Yes, you could say we smell blood. I like your expression. But more than anything, I genuinely, personally, as I stand here today, without trying to sound political or anything like that, when you live in Kelvin Grove, in this area, and you look at economic indicators and you walk around, you see a level of stability and you think, oh, that kind of makes sense. But when you go to rural Eastern Cape, rural KZN, Limpopo, and you walk around there and you see literally people following the sun. They wake up in the morning and they follow the sun around the house because they don't have a job. You go to the Northern Cape and you find people boiling weeds to feed their kids. Your reflection on the question is different. And I'm not asking to be populist. I'm simply asking that let us give South Africans a new hope. When we had the 2016 elections, after those elections, you'll remember even our currency strengthened. Because our problem in South Africa is that we need leadership that can take us in the right direction. And South Africans derive confidence in being able to express their ballot. And I think however tough, however difficult it is, it always remains critical that when we reflect the voice, we don't reflect the voice of only those who have newspapers and can read economic indicators, but really to speak to the people on the ground whose, for them, homes reflect shacks, unemployment is a real issue, and welfare is simply not enough. And I think any responsible leader who speaks on anything can't just be leading of one faction of society. It's crucial that we lead all of society if we're going to achieve the change that we need. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.